Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, A Practical Approach to Using Focus Groups in Higher Education. My name is Amber Malinowski, and I am the Director of Interactive Content and Communications here at Weave, and we're really glad that you could join us today. I have just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If some of you are new to our webinars, welcome. I always like to show a little bit about the control panel to make sure you are able to ask questions and participate fully. If you have a question, there's a little control area on the panel where you can submit those, and I'll be moderating. So even if it's about audio or anything like that, you can let me know, and then of course there will be a time to ask our presenter questions. After the questions, there will be just a really short overview of Weave and our solutions if you're interested in hanging around for that. And also there will be a really short survey. It's just a handful of questions. We use the results of that survey to help us formulate our upcoming webinar series and other things that we might be able to provide to you. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to do that, we'd really appreciate it. I'm really excited today to introduce our presenter. Dr. Tisha Paredes started in institutional research and assessment at Old Dominion University in 2005. This is also the year that Old Dominion joined Weave, which is kind of cool. So we know Tish really well. And at that time, she was a graduate student, and now she is the Assistant Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness and Assessment there. She has extensive experience working with faculty and staff on assessment, also on accreditation, and they're in the SACS region, but all things SACS, and also general education. Her research focuses on assessment of first-year student success, and her book is called Using Focus Groups to Listen, Learn, and Lead in Higher Education, and it provides a practical and cost-effective approach to conducting focus groups, which is what we'll be talking about in today's session. I'm really excited to learn about this. I'm so grateful for you sharing with us today, Dr. Paredes. We're really excited to have you doing that with our community. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
All right, well, thank you so much. And let me get into my screen. I appreciate everybody taking their time out today. I know that we all have things going on as we barrel into the end of the semester. I was just sharing with somebody earlier, focus groups is one of my favorite things to do in my job. And a few years ago, a couple colleagues of mine decided to write a book about focus groups and kind of our methodology so we could help other practitioners at schools, at colleges and universities conduct focus groups in a practical and cost-effective manner, but also in a rigorous and relevant way so they can get the data they need. So I am from Old Dominion University, been here quite some time. I love what I do, and what I have found focus groups to really help me with in my job is to add that voice to some of our numbers. And we'll talk about how we can find that voice. So first, just going over what we'll cover today, like any good assessment person, kind of what this is all about, laying out the plan. And we'll go over all of these areas. I'm going to provide you some practical steps in how to conduct a focus group, and then give you some examples of each step, and then some ideas about how you could do this on your campus, or different topics you could do on your campus. So first and foremost, what are focus groups? You know, years ago I found this quote, and I always remember this. It's just thinking about, I'm a visual person, I can just picture group people standing around having a lively conversation, right? That's really what a focus group is. And as I said, my colleagues and I really did some research over the last few years for our book, and we came up with this definition because we want to make sure that people just don't think it's you throw a bunch of people in a room and get them to talk about something. It's a little more structured than that. So here's a definition, focus groups that we'll be working from today. It's a group discussion with and this is important, a trained and skilled moderator or co-moderators, using open-ended questions to explore topics. And it's structured but relaxed. So those are some of the that focus groups are. And something you can share with other people on your campus if they don't know what a focus group is. And the other question I get asked a lot, not only, what is a focus group? Don't you just get people in a room to talk, but why use focus groups? Why would we want to use focus groups? I am not going to go over that first bullet right there, increased accountability. I think we are all feeling that internally and externally. We used to say all these external pressures. Well, I think now they're manifesting internally, right? More and more leadership are asking for data, asking for why, asking how do you know? And so all of that needs to, focus groups can help answer some of those questions. College and universities, we have a ton of data. Good Lord, if you can count it, we've counted it. We've put it in a spreadsheet, we've put it in a database. Retention rates, head count, graduation rates, admissions, GPA, enrollment, test scores, grades, on and on and on and on, right? All quantitative metrics. We've got databases among databases that have those metrics. But do they really tell us the experiences of our stakeholders? And I'm talking students, faculty, staff, community, alumni, employers. Do they really tell us how our stakeholders are experiencing what we promise, experiencing our environment, experiencing our culture, our services, those kinds of things? And so, we tend to think that things that matter are counted and things that we can count matter, but really it comes down to not everything that can be counted counts, right? And so we really need to find ways to make sure that we can give some more depth to all of our numbers that we're counting. And my favorite thing here is qualitative data, whether it's in focus groups or interview kind of format, answers that elusive why question. So have you ever looked at a number or an enrollment or retention rate and said, why? I do that all the time. And somebody joked with me that I'm a why person. And I said, no, I'm not. And then I realized I was, that I keep asking why. But why is that number that way? Why are students dropping out? Why are students not learning critical thinking? Those kinds of things. So that's why we use focus groups. There are some other uses there's some uses of focus groups, kind of three categories. There are other uses than these three, but I think focus groups can fall into these three buckets. First of all, kind of the sole data gathering source. You want to gather information about a topic of interest, and you want to ask specific groups of people about that topic of interest. Another use of focus group is exploratory. So you want to do a survey, but you're not exactly sure what questions to ask or what format that survey should take. Focus groups can help you form the constructs for your surveys. And lastly, it could be follow-up to a survey. So one, focus groups could help you pre-survey, kind of plan the survey, or it can help you post-survey. Maybe there's some data in that survey that you want some explanation. And again, that elusive why question, why this number, why this percent? And so focus groups can really help you get deeper meaning from surveys. So, like I said, I'm going to give you some practical ideas on how to conduct focus groups on your campus. There are, we have outlined, my colleagues and I outlined 6 steps to conducting a focus group. We do that here at ODU. I've been doing that a little over a decade now, and I find it to be doable. You know, I think it helps people understand what the process is, what steps need to be taken, and all of that. I will go over 1, 2, and 3, and somewhat the 4th step, but 5 and 6 I will just briefly touch upon. So first and foremost, you get the call. I want to do a focus group. I know many of you, I want you to raise your hand. How many of you have gotten that call? Hey, Tisha, I want to do a focus group. Hey, Amber, I want to do a focus group. And immediately you think, uh-oh, okay, what is it about? How are we going to do it? We go into planning mode, right? So the first step is, do we do or not do a focus group? And this is the most critical step, and is iterative. It's not a one and done step. So, but we do want to determine, why are we conducting this focus group, and what do we want to learn? And really here we suggest developing a kind of proposal where you define the purpose of the focus group and write the research questions. And some people say, oh, why am I writing research questions? I just want to gather data on first-year students. Yes, and if we want a sound methodology that gathers the data we need and can act upon, then we need to write research questions. Any social scientists, any scientists, any humanities, we need to write questions that guide our methodology. So, and the other point of the purpose of the proposal is that it gets everybody on the same page, right? So as you're asking these questions, why do you want to conduct? What do we hope to learn? What's the idea? Who are the participants? We kind of get our focus, right? Everything becomes clearer. And so when that person that called you up and said, hey, I think we should do a focus group, they have this big idea maybe, and these questions or these concepts narrow them to what is it that they want to know. So I always like kind of a plug and play, fill in the blank thing. So if you can articulate in one sentence, the purpose of this focus group is to learn about first year students' experiences, is to learn about underrepresented groups' sense of belonging, is to whatever you want to put there, but it should be about a sentence. And some of you, I always joke, some of you can use sentences with commas and ands and semicolons, but it should be one sentence. The other part of the proposal is other important questions. Sorry, I have a little bit of a typo there. Other important questions to address in the proposal. Again, focusing what is it that you want to know and how can we actually use the data? What decisions will be made? A lot of people don't think about this when they propose focus groups. They don't really talk about what is it that we're going to do. The other piece is really interesting. Can the participants talk about the topic for 60 to 90 minutes? And some of you may be smiling, and I always find this very intriguing because people will come up with topic ideas like, hypothetically, let's gather students to see how we can market the libraries. Well, I don't know about you guys' campuses, but I'm not so sure that students can hold a 90-minute discussion about how to market the libraries, or you know, some other ones. Let's gather faculty and talk about strategic plan. Again, do they want to hold a 90-minute conversation about that? So this is a very important question here. And then the last piece, do the participants have adequate knowledge to discuss the concepts? Do you want to ask students how they learn critical thinking? Well, do they know what critical thinking is? Do they even know how they learn? So those are some of the things too, and that you have to think about. Other very, very important questions when you get that first call, I want to do a focus group. So as promised, here are a few research and topic question examples. These are real life examples. We've done these on our campus. There are others. We've done strategic planning. We've done quality enhancement plan, which is for our accrediting body, developing that topic. So these are more common ones, I think, to most campuses. First year student success, increasing underrepresented student enrollment, and the impact of college costs and work on student success. So here's some ideas of research questions and topics. And I'm sure there are others out there, but just to give you an idea of, in the proposal, you should have these research questions, and then you should articulate the answers to some of those other questions. All right, step 2 in this is almost just as important as step 1. Once you got the research questions and the topics, then you need to start narrowing down your participants. And you really do need to choose wisely here. Again, can they sustain a 60 to 90 minute conversation about the topic? Do they have knowledge about the topic? Those are 2 important things to address. But you also have to think about, are there segments of your population that may have differing attitudes or experiences or opinions? For instance, do you want to put tenure track and tenured faculty into the same room? 1, will they have the same experiences? Or 2, is there going to be some discomfort with tenure track faculty talking about their experiences while tenured faculty are in the room, who may sit on their promotion and tenure panel? So these are things you have to think about. The other common one, undergraduate versus graduate students. They don't have the same experiences. So first defining your population, faculty, students, staff, and then looking at the segments of your population, tenure, tenure track, undergrad, grad, so forth. But then, depending on your topic, you might have to think about splitting out these groups even more. For instance, if our topic was sense of belonging, we wanted to understand first year students' sense of belonging, or community engagement or something like that. Would there possibly be a difference between underrepresented groups and majority group? Should we separate those groups? Is there a power dynamic there? Are female experiences different than male experiences? Should we separate those groups? Some research says that women may not speak up as much as men in a group setting, same with underrepresented groups. So depending on your topic, you have to really think carefully about your participants, your population, your segments of your population, and those kinds of things. And really the question here is, are there shared experiences? Okay, you really have to think about, are there shared experiences? And then everybody wants to know, they always ask me, well, how many do I need to get, Tisha? How many per group? And we say 7 to 10 participants per focus group that possess some shared quality. So again, if you're looking at tenure track faculty, if you want to do tenure track women faculty, tenure track male faculty, or tenure track second year faculty versus 4th year faculty, those kinds of things you really need to think about. So, but they've got to have shared experiences, 7 to 10 people that have shared experiences. Then 2 to 3 groups per segment. Now this is where you get very large very quickly. So if somebody tells you, oh, I want to hear from faculty, I want to hear from students, I want to hear from staff. As you can see, if you're doing the math really quickly, 7 to 10 participants, maybe there's some segments of each group, 2 to 3 groups per segment. This could get really large really quickly, and I have an example there. If you're just looking at tenured versus non-tenured, 3 and 3 groups, that's 6 groups you have to run. And let's not even talk about other factors that may play into that. So really, really be thinking about this. And then once you define all of that, you want to take a random sample of that population or segment. And here's an example of some of that. And I talked through a little bit, but here's a first-year student population. We want to know about their student success. And we want to hear from faculty, and we want to hear from advisors. So 3 populations there. And then you can see on the right-hand side the corresponding sample that we take from each one of these. Now for here, notice that we don't need any segments. We just want first-year students, we want faculty, and we want advisors. So you can kind of see how it looks from there. With the other example, underrepresented student enrollment, we want to hear from very specific underrepresented groups, and we outline them there. Then, depending on some of our research questions, we felt it necessary to have segments. So we want 2 groups of first-year students that are underrepresented, and we want 2 groups of junior students of underrepresented students. So again, those are 4 groups. 4 segments. So we're kind of expanding our focus group pretty quickly. And then we randomly sample from there. So that's just to give you an idea. These are not hard and fast rules. Sometimes we oversample. Sometimes if, back to this first example, we only have 30 advisors across the institution, so we invited the whole population. We only had about 100 faculty teaching high first-year enrollment courses, so we invited 50%. So you can kind of play with this random selection a little bit depending on your population. The third step is another important step, and the reason why I really wanted to spend time on 1, 2, and 3 is because these are the steps that really set up your whole entire focus group project. And this next one, the moderator's guide, what the moderator's guide does and why it is so important is that it provides your moderators with the questions that they will ask the same way in a similar manner to all the groups. So again, we're talking about having multiple groups, not just one group. You want to make sure that the question is asked in a similar, the questions are asked in a similar way, that they have a flow to them. They start with the broad and get more specific, that they're open-ended. So again, going back to for using focus groups as a methodology, you really want to spend time up front in doing this so you can get data that's usable. You just don't throw people in the room. There are a lot of steps to this. So the moderator's guide is structured, and it also communicates the purpose to the moderators. And it provides an outline for reporting results. And when I get to step 6, I'll bring that back up again. You want to start with your research questions. And so that's, again, why research questions are very important. What is it that you want to know and want to answer? And you develop open-ended questions from there. So you're not asking close-ended questions like a yes-no question. You're asking open-ended questions that can facilitate conversation. I have some examples on the next couple of slides. And again, starting with the broad and moving to the more specific. And lastly, if your topic warrants sensitive questions, you want to put them in the middle. So you're not ending the group with a sensitive question, because once you end the group, your participants leave the room, and you want to make sure that they're leaving the room, you know, that they're okay when they leave the room. So you want to put your sensitive questions in the middle. So we have a format to our moderator's guide. It's a template that we just rinse and repeat all the time. And I think it actually has the same typo every time too, because I haven't corrected it. But these are the 5 parts of the moderator's guide. First, you want to start with the introduction, and the introduction is important because it sets the kind of the guidelines for the group. So first, the moderator will introduce themselves and the purpose of the group, so everybody's on the same page. Then the moderator will talk about the process and the guidelines, and talk about confidentiality, talk about having open and honest opinions, talking about there are no right or wrong answers, and those kinds of things. Then we have digital recorders in our focus groups. When I first started, we had tape recorders, which I always thought was funny. But now we have digital recorders. And so we explain the use of the digital recordings, who has access to the digital recordings, and when they'll be destroyed. And then we transition to the start of the group. So we make a statement. It is not a question. We say, if there are no questions, then let's begin. And it's a statement to move forward. Then the participants introduce themselves briefly. The moderator models that and says, I am Tisha, my major is, or whatever piece of information we want. And then other people follow that model. Then we ask a warm-up question. And the warm-up question is very, very crucial here. For a few reasons. One, we all know that participants have a lot of things going on outside of this group, right? So when they come into the room, you want them focused on the topic. So the warm-up question is a very broad question about the topic. It is topic related. It is not, if you were an animal, what would you be? It is not an icebreaker. It is topic focused. And you ask participants to write down their answer on a note card. The reason we do this as well is that some participants may not be ready to think right away. I am an introvert. If somebody asks me a question, I need time to think about my response. I need time to reflect or process that question. And if I've got a million other things going on, it takes me that much more time to think about the question that I should be focusing on. So the warm-up question is very crucial to setting the stage. Then you ask participants to discuss the question, and that's how you get them warmed up and ready to talk. That's why it's a warm-up question. Then you move right into the topic. Again, the warm-up question should be a large, broad, open-ended question about the topic or topics you are going to discuss. And anywhere from 3 to 6 topics can occur, depends on your time. Sometimes we say about anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes here on the 4th step. So as many questions or topics you can get into that section. And then the last piece is a wrap-up question. And the wrap-up question closes the focus group. It is a close-ended question. It asks the participants to reflect upon the conversations that were had, the discussions that were had, and write one response. Give one final comment. And it's closed for a reason. You want to end the focus group. You don't want it to continue. You don't want it to go into a different direction. You want to end the focus group, and then that's it. The discussion has done. People can go on to different things. But it also prompts them to reflect on all the discussions that were had leading up to the wrap-up. And so you get some really rich data here. You get people to think about what they heard or experiences they may not have discussed in the group, and they give you one final comment. Again, that is actually written on a note card as well, allowing people time to think and process. So here are some examples of focus group questions. This is first year student success. It's a student group. So you can see the format here. for open-ended questions. What are some reasons that you choose to return to the university? Sometimes we ask, why did you choose to come back for another year? So sometimes we start with kind of an academic way of saying it, and then we try to get it in a way that's a little more easier to say during the group. Then we ask them about challenges, and you can kind of see these are not yes or no. Sometimes they can list challenges, and then we'll ask them to explain more. So there's some prompts that are needed there. And then that last question could be turned into a wrap-up question. You know, given what we discussed today, what is one recommendation you have for the incoming class of first-year students? So you can see how these can be really useful during the group. On the other side, the right-hand side, the impact of college costs, we really wanted to focus on the value of education, what students think about the value of college education, what's it mean to them, what's it mean to their family, the factors for deciding to attend or remain at Old Dominion, the impact of their working on or off campus, and then the benefits. So you can see again how this could yield some really deep, rich discussions and answer some of these topics, right? You know, what is the impact of college costs? The fourth step is selecting and training the moderators. And I like to think of the moderators as my research tool, right? They're my survey. They're my data collectors. Their role is to elicit information from participants. We use a co-moderator system. So we have 2 moderators per group. And this is very important for several reasons. One, co-moderators trade off asking the questions. So it's not just one moderator talking the whole time. So I'll ask the first question, my co-moderator asks the second question, and then we go back and forth like that until the end. Second, the use of co-moderators is important because each person sees and hears things differently. When we train our moderators, we tell them it's very important to make notations about tone, about nonverbals. Were people nodding their heads? Did they make a statement but it was sarcastic? Was it kidding? Was it joking? You know, those kinds of things. And you can't always, in a room of 7 to 10 people, one moderator cannot always pick up on all of that. So that's another reason for having a co-moderator. And so it's a very nice flow that happens between the co-moderators. So some characteristics when you're looking for co-moderators, they should be flexible, they should know about the topic a little bit, but not all knowing, patient, friendly, and inviting. Remember that lively conversation between neighbors, they need to set that atmosphere in the room. And they need to mirror the participants' characteristics, and this is very important as well. If you're doing a focus group with undergraduate students, you need to be mindful, and I'm touched with this reality some days that I no longer look like the undergraduate population. They're much younger than me, and so I don't want them to be talking to the adult in the room. So we hire and train graduate students who are closer to the undergraduate population's age. If you're doing focus groups with underrepresented groups, you want to make sure that your moderators look like your participants and whatever characteristic your participants have. So those are very, very important things to be mindful of. Also, too, remember you're using a co-moderator system, so the co-moderators should be different from each other. You know, maybe in gender or in ethnicity, or maybe one grad and undergrad student. So be thinking about those things. Maybe one advisor, one faculty member. So again, thinking about your population characteristics. And by the way, these people are on your campus. And this is the coolest thing about this methodology, and this is why I really like it a lot. You can pull from your administrative faculty, your teaching faculty, your graduate students, your honors students. You can pull from those pools of people to be your co-moderators, to help you out. They get some professional development, or maybe they get some knowledge in it, and then they also can help you conduct the group. So that's another interesting way to look for co-moderators on your campus. So the moderators, again, elicit inputs and achieve the objectives of the researcher. So you want to make sure that your co-moderators facilitate the group, they invite participants, they talk less than a third of the time, they ask probing questions or follow-up questions, and they try to balance the input from everyone. And this is a skill. This is why you have to choose your co-moderators wisely as well. This is a skill. And again, there are people on your campus that have a little bit of qualitative background. Maybe they had a qualitative class in their graduate program, or they have some sort of social science degree that you can leverage, or they just are just one of these people that can have this type of impact and create this atmosphere. The other piece is a little more clear. They are to achieve the objectives of the group. That's why the moderator's guide is very important. It tells them exactly what they need to do, what questions they need to ask, and what material they need to cover. So they have their own roadmap. And in the moderator's guide, you can also make suggestions for time. So that helps them as well. They are to remain neutral and objective, which is hard sometimes, which is why we ask moderators to be knowledgeable but not all-knowing, and not really be personally involved in the topic, or insert themselves if a participant were to talk about something that they do. For instance, and this has happened before, but a student may say, or a faculty may say, or some participant may say, oh, I hear that the libraries are closed at 6 o'clock every day, 6 p.m. every day. We know that's not true, but it is not our place to insert ourselves. If the topic was about university librarians, I would not have a librarian co-moderate. I would also caution the moderators not to correct the participants, because that is their perception, and that is the point of the focus group, to hear about experiences and perceptions. Sometimes participants go a little off the topic, and that's okay. We had a focus group about football and the impact of football, and at some point the faculty started talking about study time for classes and the impact of game day activities. And that's perfectly fine. You know, it wasn't one of our questions, but they brought it into the group. It was related to the topic, so we allowed that to happen. But then we came back to our set of questions. So as you can see, the moderators is just as important as any other piece here. They do need to be trained. We have about a 90-minute training for our moderators, and we go over some reminders. We give them some helpful hints. We give them some canned prompts that they can use during the group if the conversation is kind of stalling. So really be thinking about your moderators here and who on your campus. I have a list of moderators I can pull on, and I update it every year and bring in new people, and some people fall off the list, and it's really good to have that at the ready so you can bring people in for a focus group project. The last couple of pieces, as I said, I'm not going to talk at length about. I do want to leave some time for questions, because I just touched on all of this, all of these steps, really. And there's so much more that I could have said for some of them, but I wanted to give you enough information that you could at least start thinking about how you would do focus groups on your campus. The last two steps are actually conducting the focus group and then analyzing and reporting the data for step 6. Now, conducting the focus group, it's really all about the logistics here, and you wouldn't believe how important these are. And all of this, I will tell you, all 6 steps should be outlined in your proposal. So as you're building your focus group, your proposal has all 6 steps in them. So the timing of the focus group is important. We all have the ebbs and flows of the semester. We don't want to invite faculty to a focus group, say, now, when we're trying to get finals done or trying to wrap up the last couple of classes. We also don't want to invite students at this time. But maybe it would be good to have a focus group with advisors during spring break because they may not be inundated with student appointments. Breakfast meetings for administrators might be good, but not so much for students. And sometimes we've had focus groups at 7 o'clock at night in the residence halls. So really, really thinking about all of this is important, especially you have to think about your population. Facilities is another important thing. We are notorious for building and rebuilding or fire alarms or, different things going on around here. So really thinking about your facility that's easy to get to. If you're inviting community partners or employers, is there easy parking? Is it easy for people to find? I caution you against using rooms with a big glass window because that's very distracting and people can see the participants, and sometimes you don't want people to know who the participants are. So really thinking about your facilities. Noise, right now, we have different buildings being maintained, and so there may be a lot of noise going on in certain buildings, so thinking about that. Incentives is another important piece here, and we're not talking about a lot of money. What we like to do is we say if you come to a focus group, you get your name into a drawing for a pair of movie tickets or for an ODU sweatshirt or a Starbucks gift card, $5 gift card. So the participants, and that drawing occurs at the end of the group. So the participants have essentially a 1 in 10 chance of winning. That seems to work well. It's a quick reward. I've heard other people do larger rewards where they give every single participant $5 if they show up. That's another thought. You can usually get t-shirts or sweatshirts relatively cheap or donated from your bookstore or campus store. The movie tickets for us, we buy them in bulk, and they're probably about $8 to $10 a piece. Refreshments, again, depending on your population, you got to think about your refreshments and the time of day. If you're holding a breakfast for administrators, is it plated? Is it buffet? That could impact your focus group. Is it a lunchtime thing with pizza? Is it at night? Is it just during the afternoon and you just need some coffee or water or soda? Then your invitations and reminders, you have to invite people, you have to ask them to select a group, you have to email them, you have to call them the night before. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I need to reschedule, then you need to reschedule them to another group. So the invitations and reminders are really important here. And then supplies. We ask our moderators to just show up with their favorite writing utensil. And we have the digital recorders, the extra batteries, the markers, the pens, the paper, the note cards, whatever they need, we bring to the group. And then lastly, the analyzing and reporting the results. Your moderator's guide is important here because you have it structured where your moderators ask specific questions and the participants respond to those questions. So when your moderators are listening to the recording or reviewing their notes, they can do a thematic analysis under each question. Now notice, I did not say that the transcripts needed to be, that the conversation needed to be transcribed verbatim. In my years of doing this and the many focus groups that I've done, I have not once had our discussion transcribed verbatim. And the reason being is, one, that can be expensive, not only in time, but if you subcontract a group to do that, that could be costly. Two, if you've chosen your moderators wisely and if you've trained them, they can do the first level analysis for you. And three, you will have the digital recordings for a specified amount of time. We usually say until the report has been vetted. And so that could be anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on who the report goes to. So if you need to listen to something, if you need to go back, the recordings are there. Now, some people really think that transcription is the way to go, and I'm not here to tell you no, but I say that I would think about, is it really always necessary? Nobody's ever asked me for my transcripts, so I doubt they would all read them. And then the last thing is you want your co-moderators to debrief. So they summarize and do a thematic analysis separately, and then they come back together and they make sure that they're on the same page. And this is interesting because sometimes one moderator, one co-moderator heard something differently or saw something differently than the other. Then they submit one report. The other thing is identifying the audience. That's very, very important because that kind of directs how your report will be formatted and how it will be kind of disseminated. All right, so I've gone through the 6 steps briefly. In the last like 5 minutes or so, I want to talk about the best laid plans. So when you need to create plans B through E. And here's, all of these are real life examples sometimes. Sometimes we are challenged, or sometimes we can't say no, and that's okay. There are ways to adapt this methodology, but I wanted to give you the methodology up front, and then you start to negotiate or think creatively. So first, when asked to do the impossible, when your leader comes to you and says, I need focus groups to be done in the next 3 weeks, and I want you to talk to these 11 constituent groups. And I want it done in 3 weeks, which may or may not have happened on our campus. And so this is when you need to really rely on that proposal. Okay, this is what it's going to take. Where can we be creative? Where can we kind of cut? Since we've got the constituent groups, we probably only need one of each group. We don't need multiple groups. So that's when you really rely on your proposal to help you think creatively and negotiate. It's also important too with the proposal because everybody's on the same page. Nobody comes back to you and says, oh, I thought we were doing this, or I thought we were talking to this group. No, here's the proposal. Challenges during the planning stages, they can range from low interest, and we've had that before where we've sent out invitations and nobody's signed up. That tells you that your topic is not interesting and maybe you need to do a gets off. This semester we had what I'm referring to as a hurricane, where we were closed for 4 days. We had the threat of a hurricane, and anything done during that time, scheduled to during that time, got rearranged. So sometimes there's challenges. We had to push back a few things, a week or two. When you're questioned, is it really reliable and valid? Are focus groups really reliable and valid? And first of all, you can't apply, or you should not apply, quantitative concepts to qualitative methodology. So that's first and foremost. Reliability and validity are quantitative measures. However, what I would propose to you and what I've said on my campus is we've set a structure in which we ensure, by the way our methodology is set up, by our structure is set up, we can ensure that we're having a rigorous methodology and we're gathering relevant data that gives us insight. And then the last thing, you know, during the focus groups, you could have disruptive participants. If you have a sensitive topic, sometimes, you know, your participants could have a moment during the group. You could have late arrivers. Your food is not there. You show up and, oh my gosh, they're painting next door and the fumes are unbearable. So these are all things that you have to work through, and you know, your co-moderator, you discuss with your co-moderator if your participant shows up late, if somebody's disruptive, who will take care of them, if you need to move, will you handle that? So you show up early to the facility to make sure, to the room, to make sure that you can take care of some of these things early. I would be remiss, I have to say, I started out this session saying that my colleagues and I a few years ago pulled together some research. We had been doing focus group for a long time and decided one day that we needed to write it down. And I have to say, I'm very proud of what we did, and I'm very proud to share that with other people. I think that this methodology I outlined is very practical, it's very cost effective. It leverages the expertise on your campus. It helps you work through that focus group call. I want to do a focus group call. And it gives you it gives you kind of relevant information, and hopefully you can make a decision on. If you want to learn more, we go in depth in our book about each one of these topics. We have more templates for you to use. But I'm also happy to, if you want to reach out afterwards, I'm happy to discuss anything with somebody about how to conduct a focus group on their campus. I mean, we're here to share our resources. We're in this together. And so I just want to point out that, that if you want to learn more, I'm happy to be a resource for you, or you can do a deeper dive into the book. And lastly, here's some examples of focus groups that you can do on your campus. We've done all of these on our campus. We've, for accreditation purposes, some accreditors want to know how employers view our students, and that's really hard data to get now. HR places in businesses may not want to answer surveys. Surveys have low response rates, so forth. So recently, for specialized accreditation, we invited 10 employers, 2 groups of 10, and we got feedback from them on our students, how well our students are performing, on curriculum, on different topics, and then we used that for an accreditation report. Just a piece. There were obviously other things going on there too, but just a piece of support for the accreditation report. Determining how well students learned or applied their skills, developing strategic plan, either assessing the strategic plan or developing the strategic plan. And if you're in the SACS region, SACS COC region, you need to do a quality enhancement plan. We actually use focus groups to develop a quality enhancement plan and to assess it during the 5 years that we've had it, 6 years that we've had it. So lots of different topics that you can use focus groups for. So this is my last slide, and I do want to save some time for questions, and I'd be happy to answer anything. I don't know if people have written in while I was talking, or if anybody has some questions that they'd like to ask.
That was very helpful. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed all of that. It was it's a lot to cover, 6 steps in about 40 minutes. You did great. But we're getting lots of compliments. And another thing that, and this is something I just want to clear up, there were a lot of questions about getting a copy of the slides.
Yeah.
And so we do have those, and I will send them out after. And there's also we might develop kind of a tip sheet, you know, with Dr. Paredes. It's a 1-pager as well. So if you want those, just as long as you're registered, you'll get them. There are some questions. I always like to put them up on the screen. I'm hoping you can see them. I'm the kind of person that I have to read it in order for it to kind of make sense to me. So I'll still read them out loud, but then if you want to be able to see them on the screen, I've popped those up there. And the first one is, would it be okay to have a couple of other people besides the moderator in the room take notes as a supplement to the recording device? What do you think about that?
So remember when we talked about the atmosphere, and sometimes when you introduce other people into the group, it changes the atmosphere. Also too, when somebody is taking notes, and think about in your own experiences, when you're talking and somebody's taking notes as you speak, it kind of leads you to, oh, I must be saying the right thing, or this is what they want to hear. And then when they stop taking notes, oh, I didn't say the right thing, or they're not interested in what I just said. So having extra people take notes sometimes sends the wrong message, but also can change the atmosphere. I can understand why people would like to do that, but depending on your population, it may not be something that you could do.
And the next question, do you ever use third-party moderators who are not associated, or do you have it off campus?
Yes, yes. In fact, actually, we have one situation going on now. There's a group that we contacted a local institution faculty member to see if they could come in and conduct a focus group for us, 2 faculty members to conduct a focus group for us. We have had focus groups off campus as well. We've had them we did one for Centera Hospital about our healthcare programs, and we had it with the HR directors in Centera.
And the same, I'm assuming the same methodology just applies. It's just a different location and maybe a different group.
Correct, correct.
Do you ever reuse your moderators after you've trained them?
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you had a group of them.
Yes.
Okay. How big is that group?
Absolutely. Yeah. They go through the expedited retraining. Maybe they've got a 30-minute retraining instead of the 90-minute long training. So yes, absolutely.
Oh, and that kind of goes into the next question. Who trains them? How long does it take? What kinds of things do you cover?
Yeah. So typically I train the moderators. It's about 90 minutes, and we cover pretty much a lot of what I discussed here, problems that could happen during the group, how to handle problems. We give them prompts when the discussion isn't going the way they want it to go. We give them tips. I see a couple questions here. We give them tips on how to not necessarily stop, but discourage a long-winded participant. We give them tips on leveraging nonverbals. I mean, it's a lot of information, and then we train them on how to analyze the data as well.
Do you seek IRB approval for all those focus group investigations? Sometimes.
So in most examples, the information, just like with assessment of student learning, in most of those examples, the information is used for institutional improvements and is not published. And I actually sit on the IRB University board. And so most of the time we do not publish the information. And when we want to publish the information, we do seek IRB approval.
When would a series of one-to-one interviews be considered over a focus group?
When your participants don't show up, which has happened. You invite 10 and 2 show up. Then you turn it into a one-on-one interview. Maybe each moderator takes one person. But realistically, sometimes if it's a sensitive topic, sometimes it warrants a one-on-one interview. You have to be careful because, again, your moderator is the one gathering your data, and it's from their lens. So the one-on-one interviews need to be used in very specific situations. We do one-on-one interviews for, say, pre-tenure faculty who may be uncomfortable sharing their experiences with a larger group.
Are there any considerations for participants' confidentiality confidentiality and privacy in a focus group, and how do you control or manage data and information sharing?
Right. Well, that second question is harder. We do in the introduction and setup for the group, we talk about confidentiality. We talk about not discussing, not attributing statements out to people outside of the group. We're very, very explicit with that. To my knowledge, I don't know if that's happened, but it's like with anything, it's really hard to control the information sharing outside the group, but we do ask that people respect the confidentiality of the group, and I think people take that seriously. I think students and faculty and staff take that very seriously when we've conducted a group, which again is why you need to set up the group in a structured way. It's not just throwing people in a room. This is a serious methodology, and kind of gives more weight to that confidentiality.
Mm-hmm. And the last question is kind of related to one of the other ones. Does your book cover the moderator training? And I've had 2 people specifically ask, how do you politely discourage along-winded students? They really want to know.
Yeah, so
this
actually,
must have happened to some of you.
Yeah, this happens all the time. So yes, the book actually has templates. It has details about every single step. It has templates. It has more details. There are about 10 appendices with exactly the training that we go through, the prompts to give the moderators. What we say is use your nonverbals when you're trying to discourage long-winded participant. You look away from them. So this should not be at no point should the focus group be a one-on-one conversation with the moderator. You look around the room, you turn your attention because you want your participants talking to each other. Sometimes you find that break and you say, you know what, you have a lot of experiences. Let's hear from others to see what they think. Or when you're asking the question, you turn your attention away from the person. You leverage nonverbals. You say, hey, as a long-winded person was talking, as Steve was talking, I saw that, Amber, you were nodding your head. What do you think about that? Or what are your experiences? So there are ways to do this. And as I'm talking, my head is turning in different directions in my room. But there are ways. It's difficult, but it can be done in a polite manner.
Thank you so much for answering the questions and for all the wonderful information you covered. Very organized in a short amount of time. I'm sure you could do an entire series on this.
Yes, I have.
So, yeah, that's why there's a book, right?
Yeah, right.
I think it really, that's one thing I've liked about all of your webinars is that they really demystified a lot of things, and I hope everyone, I know I did, walked away with very practical things that I can now think about or go do if I wanted to do something like this. So thank you so very much, and thank you everyone for coming and participating. For those of you that are still here, I do have just a couple of pieces of information about Weave. I know a lot of you are familiar with us, but some of you, this might be your first time interacting with us. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, my name is Amber. I was the Assistant Director of Assessment at a school in Texas before I came over to Weave. Everybody here at the company has a background very similar to mine. We have people who've worked in IE, IR, we have people who've been faculty members, and we have now come over to Weave to help all of our colleagues, just like Dr. Paredes just did, with this important work. And we do that in a couple of different ways. We have software solutions, and we also have resource solutions. So things like these webinars, consulting, and things like that. And we were actually founded at an institution, Virginia Commonwealth University. And as I said, all of our team is very passionate and interested and experienced in this work. Our acronym actually represents the assessment process. It's something that a lot of people don't know, but this is actually where we came from. This was created at VCU, and it's still something that's really important to us today. And we are still assessment professionals at heart. We actually apply the assessment process to everything that we do. So the webinars today, there'll be a survey at the end. Any other types of solutions that we provide, we want to make sure, particularly with our software, and I know that several of you on the call today are valued members, we want these to be flexible solutions so that they can work for not just different institutions, but different groups inside of different institutions. Not everybody does this work in the same way. And we also want all of our solutions to feel easy and simple. This work is already complex enough, and we're supposed to help you with that. So this should be very simple. So those are two things that we really focus on with the software, but also with all of our resources. And we help institutions with assessment, course, program, institutional learning outcomes, those types of things, both academic and non-academic. We help people with accreditation, both regional and programmatic. We help with credentials management, program review, and strategic planning. As I said, both in the software and also with other types of solutions and support. Something that we're really passionate about, and if you are at all interested in other things that we have available, you can go to our website, and we have a resource center. So you go to weaveeducation.com and then go to resources, and we have lots of webinars, handouts, tip sheets, all available for free. And you just have to click the button and you can consume those things, share them with other people. If you have ideas for other things that you think would be useful, or if you'd like to give a webinar, we would love to hear from you. And this is just really important work to all of us, and we really thank you for participating today. And if you have any ideas or comments, we'd love to hear them. Again, Tisha, thank you so much. This was great. If you are still hanging out, you will get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. It takes me a day or two to kind of get all that fixed up on the website, but we will send all of that out as long as you were registered for the webinar, and then you can also share it with others. Again, thank you so much. If any of you are going to be in New Orleans, I know that Dr. Paredes is going to be there for SACS. Is that in just like 5 days? Oh my gosh. We would love to see you. You can stop by, and Dr. Paredes will be wandering around New Orleans as well if you want to talk more to her about focus groups or her book or anything else. Thank you again so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great day, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody.